Hey, regular kids, this is May 3rd. It's a Friday. Let's see, we're ahead of superheroes. We're getting recording 6th period. A bunch of haters who think I try to be mean to them. You can still donate stuff through next week for the day of service and the book drive. For those of you at home, you're more than welcome to use the audiobook files or the ebook. Both of them are on there. And I sold the cookie pack today. Monday, we're going to go to the Giant Pixie Sticks. Tuesdays with the Laffy Taffies. With our book, let's see, we have from there we got to our main character, Brian, who does not make the best choices, as he tells us right away. And then his best friend's name is? Mark. Nicely done.
Let's go.
And then, let's see, how do they make money? Hustling at pool.
Debate.
Did you say debating people?
Debate. Like debating.
That's how you make money, but you go ahead and you try that.
No, like you debate someone to think.
And then they owe money. How much money do they owe?
$3.
Why do they owe $3?
Coke.
For the actual Coca-Colas. And then we got to their friend Eminem, not the rapper. And with Eminem, he's a hippie. And what's a hippie?
Peace.
The peace, love, and things like that. Hippies believe in charging kids points for sitting on the ground as opposed to being what they're supposed to. But, you know, hippies are different creatures. You can't believe all of them from there. And then I think that's right about where we left off with you guys. Let's see. We're on page 13. Oh, yeah. It helps me start on page 9. But still, page 13. Oh, we got to the descriptions. On the front, you have Brian, who's the big dark-haired one, who's all adorable, that the chicks dig, who looks like a St. Bernard puppy. And then you have Mark, who's the one that looks like a lion, who's the scary one over to the side. And then we're not going to meet the one over there until Monday, because she'll pop in when we finally get to that part. All right. Then halfway down, he says, let's go look for Eminem. And so they were down and they were leaving the bar because there's no one there to debate to make money.
Debated, not debate.
Oh. Debate? That makes so much how embarrassing on my part. Let's go look for Eminem, Mark said abruptly. We left. It was dark outside and seemed a little chilly. This was probably because school had just started, and it always seems like fall when school starts, even if it's hot out. Charlie's bar was on a real crummy street, with a lot of other bars whose bartenders kicked us out when we strolled in. A movie house, a drugstore, and a secondhand clothes store that almost always had a sign in the window saying, "We buy almost anything." And from the looks of their clothes, they did. When my old lady went into the hospital, we got so low on money, I bought some clothes there. It's pretty lousy having to buy used clothes. We found Eminem in the drugstore reading Newsweek, which shows what a weird kid he was, since there were plenty of skin mags and things to read. All right, a little kid like him shouldn't be reading that junk, I know, but he should at least want to. Real quick, with the Newsweek, this is when they find Eminem, the little hippie kid. This is what he's reading for fun, the thing that you probably see your grandparents reading. So he's a little bit on the different side. When he says that he should be reading a skin mag, those are magazines that have women in them who show lots of skin. Use your imagination. Yes, by the imagination. Hey, Charlie said you was looking for us? Mark greeted him. Eminem looked up at him. Yeah, how you guys doing? Eminem was the most serious guy I knew. He always had this wide-eyed, intent, trusting look on his face. But sometimes he smiled. And when he did, it was really great. He was an awful nice kid, even if he was a little strange. He had a hiccup, big gray eyes, the kind you see on war orphan posters, and charcoal-colored hair down past his ears and down to his eyebrows. A quick pause. We're going to have to stop a couple times in this paragraph. When they say that he had war orphan poster eyes, it's from way back during like World War II, when they had like kids whose parents got killed in the war. They'd have like that whole, hey, help these kids out. The reference nowadays would be, if you ever watch TV late at night, not YouTube, like actual TV, they'll have these ads like, for only $1 a day, you can support these kids in Africa.
Oh, yeah.
And it pops up like these little kids, like this big eyes, like, don't you love me? And they have like this big, or like the 22 cents a day, you can support a dog, which is like a war orphan dog. That's what Eminem looks like. He's got these big puppy dog eyes. He's like,
so much money.
and like has like this big blinky thing. So that's his eyes. In a moment, they're going to talk about him wearing an army jacket and a peace symbol and moccasins. This is what they're talking about him. He probably would have grown a beard, except 13 was too young for it. He always wore an old army jacket that was too big for him, and he went barefoot even after it started getting cold. Then his father got fed up with it, and Eminem got a pair of moccasins. He had a metal peace symbol hanging around his neck and on a piece of string, on a piece of rawhide string, and he got his nickname from his addiction to M&Ms, the kind of chocolate candy that melts in your mouth, not in your hand. For years, I'd never seen Eminem without a bag of that candy. I don't know how he ate those things all day long, day after day. If I did that, my face would break out like nothing you've ever seen. You want an M&M? He held out the bag toward us. I shook my head. Mark took one, just to be polite, since he didn't really like sweet stuff. You, wanted to see us for something? Mark reminded him. Yeah, I did, but I forget what for. He was like that, real absent-minded. My sister's home, he added as an afterthought. No kiddin', asked Mark tactfully, thumbing through a bad magazine. Which one? Eminem had a million brothers and sisters, most of them younger. They all looked alike, and it was really funny to see him out somewhere. 4 or 5 little carbon copies. Dark hair, big serious eyes, hanging all over him. If I had to be a babysitter day and night, I'd lose my temper and kill one of those brats. But then, Eminem never lost his temper. My older sister, Kathy, you know. Yeah, I remember, I said, only I didn't remember too well. Where's she been? She went to a private school last year and this summer. She's been staying with my aunt. She had to come home, though, because she ran out of money. She paid for it all with her own bread. Must be smart. I couldn't remember what she looked like. I never paid any attention to her. Is she as smart as you? No, Eminem said, still reading. He wasn't bragging. He was telling the truth. He was just a very honest kid. Hey, let's go over to the bowling alley, Mark suggested. The drugstore wasn't exactly jumping with action. It was a school night and nobody was hanging around. Hey, you come too, Eminem. It was a long walk to the bowling alley. I wished for the 100th time that I had a car. I had to walk everywhere I went. As if he'd read my mind, which he was in the habit of doing, Mark said, I could hotwire us a car. That's a bad thing to do, Eminem said. Taking something that doesn't belong to you. It ain't stealing, Mark said. It's borrowing. Yeah, well, you're on probation now for borrowing, so I don't think it's such a great idea. This is going to pop up in the book, too. You guys know what hot wiring is?
Yeah. GTA? Yeah.
A little bit too much.
Good reference, GT. So this when you open the bottom with the steering wheel and you take the wires like sneak, 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 and boom, when it starts up. The only time you need a hot wire car is when you, well, just say don't have the keys. And why would you not have the keys? But now, to give Mark credit, he doesn't steal the cars. He legit just borrows them. Instead of walking someplace, he just finds a car along the street, jimmies open the door, hot wires it, drives around to do his errands, and at the end of the night, he returns it back to the same spot. So he's like, I'm not hurting anything. He's like, I'm just borrowing it, using it like an Uber that I get to Uber myself in. But apparently, the police feel differently. Police. Mark could hotwire anything. And ever since he was 12 years old, he had hot-wired cars and driven them. He'd never had an accident, but he finally got caught at it. So now, once a week, he had to go downtown on his school lunch hour to see his probation officer and tell him how he was never going to steal cars anymore. I'd been worried at first, afraid they were going to take Mark and put him in a boys' home, since he wasn't really my brother and didn't have a family. I was worried about Mark being locked up. I didn't need to. Mark always came through everything, untouched, unworried, and unaffected. Okay, Mark shrugged. Don't get shook, Brian. Brian? Eminem said suddenly. Were you named after the Lord? What? I said, stunned. For a minute, I thought he meant God. Lord Brian. Were you named after him? The poor kid had Byron and Brian mixed up. I decided to string them along. This is who he's talking about. If you take English classes in high school and you have to read really old, boring poets that teach you stuff about like love poems, that was Lord Byron. but that's who you're to hear. Yeah, I was. Was there a Lord Brian? Mark said. Hey, that's cool. I guess it's cool. What'd this guy do anyway? Oh, I can't tell you in front of the kid, I answered. Eminem shook his head. He wrote poetry. He wrote long old poems. You ought to write poetry just to keep up the tradition of the Bryans. And you ought to keep your mouth shut, I replied, before I keep up the tradition of punching wise guys in the mouth. Eminem looked up at me, and I realized from his hurt, puzzled look that he hadn't been trying to be smart. So I punched him on the shoulder and said, okay, I'll write poetry. How's this? And I recited a dirty limerick I'd heard somewhere. It made him laugh and turn red at the same time. And Mark thought I'd made it up and said, hey, that was pretty good. Can you just pop them off like that? A limerick is a 5-line poem, and there's some poets who like to make them dirty about things that are not school appropriate. If you're curious, God made Google. I only shrugged and said, sometimes, because then I'd take credit whether or not it was really due to me. I was like that. I'd also lie if I really thought I could get away with it, especially to girls, like telling them I loved them and junk when I didn't. I had a rep as a lady killer, a hustler. I kept up the old Lord Byron tradition in one way. Sometimes I'd get to feeling bad thinking about how rotten I treated some of these chicks, but most of the time, it didn't even bother me. Eminem, old buddy, Mark was saying, putting his arm across Eminem's shoulders. I was wondering if you might be able to loan your best friend some money. You ain't my best friend, Eminem said with that disarming honesty. But how much do you want? $3? I got 50 cents. Eminem reached into his jeans pocket, pulled out a couple of quarters. Here. Forget it, I said. Me and Mark looked at each other and shook our heads. Eminem was unbelievable. It's okay. I'll get 50 cents again next week for babysitting. Is that all you get paid for watching all those kids? 50 cents? I couldn't get over it. 50 cents a week? I think it's enough. I don't mind taking care of the kids. Who's going to do it if I don't? Both my parents work, so they can't do it. Anyway, I like my family. When I get married, I'm going to have at least 9 or 10 kids. There goes the population explosion. Well, hey, now that your sister's home, she can do a lot of babysitting, I said, trying to be helpful. Eminem could tell we thought he was crazy. Kathy's got a job after school. She can't help. I don't know what I have to do to convince you that I don't mind it. Okay, I'm convinced. I was also tired of the subject and got to worrying about how we were going to get $3 before tomorrow. Charlie didn't get his rough rep or his bar by being nice to people, especially ones who couldn't pay their bills. By the time we got to the bowling alley, it was 10 o'clock. There weren't many people there. Mark and I watched a few games while Eminem stared into a package of M&Ms. I finally got bugged about it and asked him, what in the Sam Hill was he doing? Take a look. He handed me the package, which was open at the top. Put it right up to your eye. I did. All I saw was a bunch of candy. It's beautiful, ain't it? Asked Eminem. I mean, look at all the different colors. Yeah, I agreed, thinking, if I didn't know this kid better, I'd swear he was high. Let me look, said Mark. So I handed him the package. Hey, this is groovy. Look at all the colors. He gave the candy back to Eminem, looked over at me and shrugged. Eminem got up. All right, I gotta go home now. I'll see you guys later. We just got here. Yeah, well, I just came along for the walk. Now I gotta go home. I watched him leave. The kid is weird. That's all there is to it. Mark lit up a cigarette, our last one, so we had to pass it back and forth. I know, but I still get a kick out of him. Come on, let's go catch up with him. Ain't nothing to do around here. Outside, I spotted Eminem at the corner. There were 3 guys trailing him. And when you see something like that around here, you know right away somebody's about to get jumped. In this case, it was Eminem. Come on, Mark said, and we cut through an alley so as to come up behind those guys. 3 against 3. The odds would have been even, except Eminem is one of those non-violent types who practiced what he preached, and me and Mark weren't carrying weapons. We slowed down to a walk when we came to the end of the alley. I could hear the voices of the 3 guys who were following Eminem. I recognized one of them. Hey, flower child, turn around. They were taunting him, but Eminem just kept right on moving. It's Shepherd, Mark whispered to me. We were waiting at the end of the alley for them to come by. They didn't. They must have had Eminem up against the wall. We could hear him. Hey, hippie, don't you answer when you're spoken to? That ain't nice. Curly, why don't you leave me alone? Eminem sounded very patient. I moved over to the other side of the alley, just in time to see Curly pull out a switchblade, reach over, and cut through the rawhide string on Eminem's piece metal. It fell to the ground. Eminem reached down to pick it up, and Curly brought his knee up sharply and hit Eminem in the face. Me and Mark looked at each other. Mark flashed me a grin. We both liked fights. We ran out and jumped on him, and the one we didn't get took off, which was a wise thing for him to do. Since we had surprised him, it wasn't too hard to get them pinned. I had Curly Shepherd in a stranglehold with one arm twisted behind his back, while Mark had the other guy pinned on the ground. How'd you like a broken arm, Shepherd? I said through gritted teeth, careful not to loosen my grip. His switchblade had fallen on the sidewalk, but I didn't know what all he might be carrying. He liked to play rough. Quick pause. Shepherd here, Curly Shepherd, was in The Outsiders. They talked about Tim Shepherd, which was the one who tried to find Dally and beat up in the movie theater for slashing tires. And then in the Rumble, Tim Shepherd shows up when the big one's fighting. Curly Shepherd is his brother. The story in The Outsiders was Ponyboy and Curly both lit cigarettes and pushed them against each other's fingers to see who was going to cry first. And then Tim came in and smacked their heads together. And then in the Rumble, Curly's not there because it turns out he's in the cooler. He's like, oh, that Curly, he's a special one. And so that's the Curly that's showing up here. Okay, you proved your point. Let us go, Douglas. That's Brian's last name. Curly said a few more things that I'm not going to repeat. He must have figured out who it was twisting his arm when he saw Mark. Me and Mark were always together. Curly had a special grudge against me anyway. I used to go out with his sister. She says she broke up with me, which was the truth. But I was spreading it around that I broke up with her and was giving all kinds of cool reasons. Curly was a little dumb. He belonged to a gang led by his brother Tim, known as the Shepherd Gang. Really original. Tim was all right. At least he had a few brains. But I considered Curly a dumb hood. Look, we didn't hurt him. And that was a lie because Eminem was sitting there against the wall, and already his cheek was swelling up and turning purple. He was tying the ends of the rawhide string together, and his hands were shaking. Let him go, said Eminem. I'm okay. We have to stop reading anyway, but we'll pick up again on Monday. I think that's fine.
Dang, that was good. I was like, where's that at?
Monday, we're going to get to a good part, and so chapter 2 is one that you're going to remember.